So what I always tell these ladies is you're not marrying yourself. When you get to the end of the aisle, there's a groom there. You might have been thinking about your wedding day since you watched Cinderella run down the stairs and lose her slipper, right? And so you're like, oh my gosh, you envision this day. Most men have not been envisioning this day. I had a groom when I worked at the hotel that he loved pigs in a blanket. And the bride was like, nobody wants pigs in a blanket for cocktail hour. And so he was vetoed.
Oh no.
And so I literally gave him a dozen pigs in a blanket right after the ceremony and 2 beers. And he sat in the corner like it was Christmas morning and was so excited because it's something he wanted.
So what are some of the signs you see that you don't think this is it?
You need to have more good times than bad times because life is already hard. When you've made your decision that this is a person that you're going to do life with, then you should be treating each other as such. And a lot of times I've also seen that unequally yoked. Like if you're having a ton of issues while you're dating,
Why go further?
why go for that? Being really mindful who your bridesmaids are, your groomsmen are. I'll be in the bathroom stalls and hear people talking mess about the wedding. And I'm like,
The wedding.
they just spent 6 figures. And you're saying all of that.
Hey family, welcome back to another episode of The Love Lens, changing your view on love one episode at a time. Make sure to subscribe, hit subscribe, all the notifications, ring the bell, and share. Now today I have an amazing guest, Irene, the queen of wedding planning, event planning, overall planning of all things. How you doing, sis?
I'm good. It's a beautiful day today.
It is. So Irene, there's so many things, but I know that, one of your main areas that you focus on is brides and weddings.
Yes.
And I don't think that I was a bridezilla, but hallelujah. I'd love to see, what do you see as the main breakdown with brides and grooms? In your event planning, I feel like you have a lot of insight into their relationship and what's going on. And we have a lot of singles that end up watching this show. So it's like in preparation for it, like, what do you see when these brides and grooms come to you?
Well, first of all, many times when I get the inquiry and the email comes through and it's the person on the other end of that is the bride, right? So she puts all her wants and thoughts and ideas. And my ideal conversation or discovery call is when they're both on the phone.
Oh.
Because what I always tell these ladies is you're not marrying yourself. You're not. Like when you get to the end of the aisle, there's a groom there. Like if you have a groom, there's a groom there. And so you might have been thinking about your wedding day since you watched Cinderella run down the stairs and lose her slipper, right? Or you were a flower girl in someone's wedding. And so you're like, oh my gosh, you envision this day. Most men have not been envisioning this day. They've envisioned finding the woman of their dreams, proposing to, buying the ring, proposing to you, and then just showing up a year from now and saying, I do.
Right.
Like they don't do that. So I say, what are the things that they want? And so many times, Cass, is when I'm on calls and the groom is on the call, I say, okay, so what do you want? She's already voiced like her dream day. What do you want? And some guys are like, wow, you're the first person we've spoken to in this whole process that said to me, what do you want? And I'm like, it's as simple as I had a groom when I worked at the hotel that he loved pigs in a blanket. Now, like, how simple is that? And our chef made them really good. It was all, handmade, homemade. And the bride was like, nobody wants pigs in a blanket for cocktail hour. And so he was vetoed by mom and the bride.
Oh, no.
And so I literally gave him a dozen pigs in a blanket right after the ceremony and 2 beers. And he sat in the corner like it was Christmas morning and was so excited because it's something he wanted. So I would always say, what is it that you want? But even before that, I always tell the couples that I'm there to advocate for them as a couple. I say, you thinking about this one day. I think about your tomorrow. I think about Easter Sunday dinner, Christmas, New Year's, all that, because the way you treat people during your wedding process on your wedding day, family-wise, they will remember. Listen, I'm Caribbean. Been married 20 years and people still talk about things that people did or didn't do at the wedding 20 years ago. So it's kind of talking to both of them and saying, what are your priorities as a couple? And what is your priorities individually?
Yeah.
And somewhere in between all that, I create a beautiful day for them that they both are going to remember and enjoy instead of, him looking like a deer in the headlight the whole 6 hours that night. Because that's what happens sometimes.
Wow. You spoke to me because when my husband and I came together, my husband, I think, was more of a groomzilla.
I've had some of those.
He wanted, what's it, champagne tastes on a beer budget, but he's also an accountant by trade, right? Like this is how he got started in his career. And I remember wanting to get the first place that we went to go see. And he was like, wait, we got to put it in a spreadsheet, right?
It doesn't make sense.
Right. I'm like, what are you talking about? We should just find the money.
Right.
But when I started to add all the things up and it was coming up to like $500 a minute, I was just like, I don't make $500 a minute.
Right.
Like, I don't see, because I feel that everyone kind of complains about the dress, the food, the this. Like, they always talk about something to spend all that money, right? So I was just like, okay, let's be practical.
Right.
So we decided on a shared vision that we wanted a family reunion. Right?
Right.
That's the feel
what it is.
That's the feel that we wanted. So we ended up doing a destination wedding in Mexico. And when folks were mad at first,
absolutely,
right? Like,
yes.
What do you mean I gotta spend money to go to Mexico? Who wants to go to Mexico? But when they were leaving our wedding, they said, when's the anniversary? When's our anniversary?
When are we doing this again?
When are we doing this again? And through my life, what it has become is that people get excited anytime we do the invite to the baby shower, to the holidays, to the Thanksgiving. People are like, oh, is Andy's friend Eric coming? Oh, is Cass's parents coming? You know, it's just because they have found their own relationships through the experience we create at the wedding. So I just love that you shared that.
Yeah, it's the truth though. And I love that you said that, because I do tell my couples, it's a family reunion. And I say that the number of guests that come, the number of guests that say yes, depends on how much you're loved. And that sounds really bad, right? But if you have a family that's really close, if your parents are the other favorites, if your parents are the ones that have been hosting things for years, everyone's going to come. Aunts, uncles, you know, we initially wanted something small, and we joke about it now. Like, my husband wanted something small. And I remember we might have engaged 2 days, and his mom kept saying, you know, how many people doing? How many people? And it doesn't matter, Mom. It's gonna, we know it's gonna be a lot of people. And she's like, no. So he said 100. Oh, no, man. He's Jamaican. He said, no, man. And it's funny how God works. So the place that we fell in love with, we started planning a wedding with what we had, because we were soon out of college. And he bought a home before he proposed. He bought a duplex.
Okay.
Right. And then so he's like, okay, what wedding can we afford currently in our mid-20s that's not going to put us out of the, bankruptcy? So we started planning for what we could pay. And of course, blessings, our parents were like, well, here's this and here's that. And our parents wanted a full bar. I'm like, well, we're not drinkers, so beer and wine is cool. But it was kind of like the mob. Every time we would, like, our decision was based on logic. And then our parents would be like a whole side conversation. Like, we're going to pay for the bar. We're going to pay for your limo. Like those kind of things. But it was like, we hosted a wedding that was very family central. And I said the venue we fell in love with could only fit 190 people.
Cool.
And it was funny because at one point, the one thing that Dwayne was like really took control over was the guest list, because I was co-hosting it, with planning it with my mom and my mother-in-law. And mom Tyndale would take off 5 people and add 6 or something, or take off 3 people at 5. And he's like, Mom, this is not mathing. Like, no, like the place could fit 190.
That's not
and what if it could have fit 300-400, we would have had that, because he comes from a big family. But it was like having, 20 years later, just celebrating my 20th wedding anniversary a couple weeks ago. And it's crazy because they still talk about how much fun they had for our wedding, because it was a family affair on both sides. It's because you have to think about it. The Bible does says 2 become 1, but that's also your bag of crazy and his bag of crazy. It's not like, yes, in the biblical times you came together and you kind of left everyone behind. But in today's days, if you're close to your parents and your family, they're coming with you.
Right.
And same either way. So you have to set both sides and plan. It is your wedding day. But I tell couples, you're hosting. It's the first event as a married couple. You might have done little things here and there, but as a married couple, is the first thing that you're hosting.
Wow.
The first thing. And you're right. People like now we send out baby like invitations, and we've done all that. We have 2 kids now, and we've done all those things. And they're like, oh, this is great. We don't get no's. We don't get no's. People do come to those things because how they were treated 20 years ago.
I love that. This is the first thing you're hosting as a married couple. And this is kind of what you'll be known for.
Right.
I remember one time Andy was asked to speak at a wedding, and he was like, say what now? Right? It was a very stressful situation, right? So he had to talk about who the groom was. And I thought it was just so powerful, because for some sides of the family, this is their first time being introduced to to the spouse, to this fiance, to this person. And so are there any tips or what do you say to your couples coming into a wedding to say, okay, well, this is how you set it up so you look good, right? Because really that might be the only story that sister so-and-so knows about you. So what are your guidelines usually with that?
You know your people. You know your people. I don't care if that's your best man sitting up there with you. But if there's a second groomsman or a second best man that is more eloquent, has more tact, that's who you put to talk, right? If you have a super long-winded friend and I'm your planner, I cut people off. I start wrapping people up because we have a schedule to keep. We have a schedule to keep.
My matron of honor got cut off. She was doing an acronym for like my last name. I think she got to like the third letter and then it was like a Sandman kid.
Sweet. Oh my God. And you just kind of know your people. Like I had a wedding one time where the groom's parents were kind of hosting the wedding, and his parents and his brother basically took 45 minutes to do a speech. They all took turns, and to the point that the chef was like, "Here's a salad, girl. Just eat your salad." Like, and the bride kept looking at me. I was like, "You try to cut them off." Like at this point, we couldn't cut them off because they signed a check. But you have to know your people. Like, I've had brides and grooms say, we would love my dad to do the welcome toast or the grace or but that's not dad's thing. Well, everybody has an uncle that's outspoken and in the life of the party, or a best friend or someone to kind of do that. But you have to know your people. Like you just can't, oh, that's my best friend. Like, no.
Yeah, it worked out for us. I think all the people that spoke were on their P's and Q's. I want to say his brother actually did like Andy's normal speech that he does at the event. I was like, did you memorize your speech? Whatever. Yes. Okay, so now, have you ever had a couple where you recommended they didn't get married?
I've never recommended they didn't get married, but the ones that I had that feeling about, it has happened. And I've had some that we've canceled the weddings prior to, and I've had a few of those, and it's, at this point, who signs the contract, which typically is the bride, is who, not that I'm signing, but that's who I'm protecting and taking care of and making sure, because it's a lot of work. I mean, just as much work as it is to make all those plans, to have to call everyone, because it's a business. That's what it is. So if you're getting married, you are signing contracts with hearts in your eyes. And that's cool because you're in love and everything's so pretty. Like when you said you saw the first venue, you're like, this is it. Yeah. I did the same thing. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. And then looked at that budget. I'm like, no, this is not it. No. But my job is, listen, I'm a hopeless romantic. I love what I do, but I'm also very logical. And I look at those numbers and I look at that contract from it's a contract. Yeah. So, you put your Jane Hancock on there, you've signed a contract. Yeah. I have couples that will hire me after they sign contracts. Like, is there anything you could do about it? I said, well, the fact that I have a great relationship with that venue or that vendor, I can get you extra perks. But what you signed is what you signed, And so, there are a lot of times when I have to go in and I have to do the one that makes all the cancellations and see if we can get refund some money back. And it's hard. Yeah. But I also believe, and I know we've talked about this, I think Lamar touched on this a bit, like you just know. And I think as women, stop ignoring. Yeah. Stop ignoring. Like that inner spirit, that Holy Ghost, that intuition was given to us for a reason. And if I see it and I feel it, it's like, yeah. I have one recently where from the beginning I was like, Mom doesn't like him. And I could see that. And the florist could see that. And now, of course, they're not getting married. And it's a blessing. Yeah. It's a blessing. And I say, you might lose money now, but it's a lot more later to get divorced.
That part. Yeah, it's a really hard process.
It is a hard process. Like that's the ugly side of what I do. Doesn't happen often, but it's the, when I get that phone call.
So what are some of the signs you see that you don't think this is it in that process? And now they've made it from wherever they've been before, and now they're making it to the aisle, and there's things that give you pause. What are some of those things that give you pause?
Just like you said earlier, one of the things my husband and I said years ago, you need to have more good times than bad times while you're dating, because life is already hard. The outside world's already going to come in and attack you. It's going to try to break you up. Finances are always going to be, that's why the vows say for richer or for sickness and health to death do us part, because you're going to go through all of that before you leave this earth from that spouse. Yeah. And to me, it's like when you've made your decision that this is a person that you're going to do life with, and your ultimate goal is to be married and be parents or whatever the goal is, then you should be treating each other as such. You should be taking care of, not giving them all the privileges, right? Because I know we had someone say that earlier, not giving them all the privileges of a husband and wife, but thinking about that other person more than themselves. Yeah. And a lot of times I've also seen that unequally yoked. And it's more than just faith, because everyone thinks when you read that it's faith. No, it's education, it's family background, it's finances, it's how you're going to do things. It's do you have, baby mama, daddy mama, stuff, like all that stuff. And it's like, if you're having a ton of issues while you're dating,
why go for
that? And a lot of times what I see, and I've seen this so many times in past brides, is they're high executive women. Yes, like high executive women, CEO, CFO, CMOs, all that kind of stuff. And they feel the pressure of, I put my career first and I'm the last one in my group to get married. And it's kind of sad, because then they have less support, because all their girlfriends who are their bridesmaids and maid of honors have babies and have all these responsibilities. So I become that for that bride and that support system for that bride.
Right.
But also I see it where they'll pick a groom who's a blue collar worker or whatever the case may be, which is okay. But you can't expect somebody who's used to going to Walmart all the time to be comfortable in Neiman Marcus. You have to be accepting to that.
Right.
So we've had a lot of conversations. And then one of the things that I adore about my husband, we were dating for a few months, and he said to me that you're my wife. I don't know when, but you are my wife.
So you were dating for a few months? And he said,
like
you're
6
my wife?
months. We were friends before. We were friends for a while. And he says, you're my wife. And I laughed at him because we were in our 20s.
A Jamaican man came out of his mouth after a few months and said, you're my wife. Okay, continue.
Yes. And basically I was like, what? And he said, in my mind, he says, I put you with my friends. We were already in college. He's like, you fit. In his mind, he's like, I put you with my parents. You fit. And he's the only child. So we were dating a few months, and then his parents were coming into town. And he's like, listen, if mom and dad don't like you, I don't know where this is going.
Oh.
He says, because all I have is them and all they have is me. And I don't like strife. Like, he's a Virgo. He's chill. Like, he don't. Like, even when my daughter and I are striving, he's like, all right, he sends everybody to different corners. He talks to us separately, brings us back. He's like, I like peace.
Yeah.
I don't want to live, in strife. So he said, I want my parents to like who I marry, because this is it. When you're not going anywhere, I'm not going anywhere. And that meant so much to me, and of course, when you're young, my, girlfriend's like, I can't believe he said that. I'm like, don't you want somebody that values their parents? Because that means they're going to value you.
Are you someone that goes to all the conferences? You get your CEUs for your job. You're always up leveling in personal development. I'm going to tell you one thing. You need your CEUs in love. Join me for Wanted Woman Live, the ultimate non-conference, unconference experience, 3 days in sunny South Florida this fall. This is an experience where women come together from all over the country to be able to be poured into. All around love. How do you show up in love? How do you receive love? How do you just have fun with love? Join the sisterhood, an amazing experience created and curated just for you, the professional woman that desires more. Click the link below, wantedwomanlive.com.
He has a great, I'm from an only child, I'm not only child, my mom is a single parent. So I know how much we mean to my mother and how protective she is of her eldest daughter. Yeah. And she wasn't going to just give me to anybody.
Right.
And her prayer, as far back as I can remember, Cass, was she wanted me to have an amazing mother-in-law. Like, that's all she said. Trying to get emotional. She's like, I just pray, because she had some strife with mother-in-laws. And she was like, not because of her, because of them. And she's like, I just want, because if I leave this earth, then I know you're taken care of by an elder woman. And so I thank God mom and dad liked me. And one of the questions dad asked was, how come we've never met anyone before Irene? And he says, no one was worthy enough.
Wow.
To meet my parents, because he holds them in such high regard.
Yeah.
And we have they just celebrated 50 years married last year. We took them on a cruise, and we have such a great example of love. And they've been through loss, and they've been through ups and downs, and they're still happily married. And that was my prayer. Like, God, send me somebody who has a 2-parent household, who's happily married, not married out of convenience or out of religion, who is happily married.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, and I tell my friends who are single, or, family members who are young and single, I'm like, look at all of that. Date in all seasons.
Yeah.
Even if you're older, give yourself some seasons. Like, has the person you've been lost somebody? Have you lost somebody? Are they there for you? Are you sick? Are they bringing you soup? Even if my husband, I remember one time I was real sick. He left the NyQuil and the soup on the steps, and he said, it's at the doorstep, because he didn't want to. He's like, you sick? I'm not trying to catch that. We were in college. He's like, I'm not catching that. But those little things, but then also looking out for my mom. And I'm like, if I've seen a groom and a bride who have no reverence for their own parents, let alone your parents, it's like, the few divorces that we've seen in our company the past 11 years, it didn't come to any surprise to me. Like, it wasn't like, oh, it was like when I revert back to the team and say, yeah, such and such is no longer together. Like, oh yeah, because there's those little things, but you just have to look out for all that.
All right. So now for our grown executive women that you mentioned, right? So in terms of insight into where they were or how they found them, because that's always a question, right? Like, Coach Cass, where are these men hiding, right? Like, do you know, like, or can you recollect any of them, like how they met their husbands or how they knew they were the one?
Well, most of my couples who are older, out of college, because I remember when I was in college, a senior in college, one of my girlfriends, we were eating dinner and she had a meltdown at Chili's. And we were like, what? Girl, we're about to graduate in 4 months. Like, we're cheering to that. Yeah. She's like, I don't have a man. Where am I going to find a man? And I was like, and it didn't even dawn on me because I had one.
Right.
And we weren't close to getting married, but I've had one for a few years at that point. And she's like, where am I going to find a guy? And I'm like, this was, early 2000s. I'm like, I don't know. And that's when online dating had first started. Like, my friends would go and like, don't let him pick you up here. When you get to the restaurant, text message us, those kind of things. But now I would tell you more and more of my couples, so I always want to know where they met. If they didn't meet in college, it's online.
Yeah.
And then a few of them is like friend groups. And then I've had other friends and other clients that are like, oh, sporting events, or they play a soccer team together, like a co-ed situation together, alumni associations. I've had some couples that met at like business associations or networking events or that kind of thing. And then somebody was like, I just told one of my friends, I'm ready to be a wife. And they were like, oh, great. And they were a married couple and they had other guy friends. And they're like, oh, let me introduce you to some friends or invite you to Christmas parties or holiday parties or whatever. And that's how they met.
Was that helpful?
Yes. Did you have that? That's how you met?
No, I met Andy at a conference with 15,000 people.
That's a Hallmark movie right there.
Glow around me. This is my story and I'm gonna stick to it, right? There was a glow around me.
Right.
And he just had to touch the hem of my skirt. I know the story might sound familiar, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it, right? So we kept in contact as friends. This was all the way in California. Turns out we were both from Florida.
Oh my gosh.
And we kind of re-met at a friend's barbecue maybe years later. And
you had to say the mutual friend together?
Yeah, the mutual friend together.
That's
and
God.
It's like, oh hey.
That is
we
God.
battled each other on the Wii.
Right.
I won, no matter what the internet says. I won.
Is there video?
There is video. Maybe Gil will get it and we'll put it in this episode. But I won, no matter what the video says. And then from there, we kind of kept on the phone, one day after about 6 months of talking on the phone, he goes, iron sharpens iron. You want to get together sometime, maybe once a month.
Pulling out the Bible verse.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm hungry now.
Oh, she said, I'm hungry now. So if your budget was not leaning that day, you better figure it out.
You better figure it out. Sis is hungry now. And we ended up having like a 10-hour date.
Oh my God.
And as they say, the rest is history. Yeah.
I just love how you met in California and found out you were in Florida. Still didn't connect like that. And then a friend, them angels.
That's
telling
it.
you.
But we both had to say yes to going to the barbecue. Okay.
Yeah.
Because this friend lived an hour away.
Because Lamar would have said no.
That's it. That's it.
You live too far.
Seriously. And Andy says, because I also lived an hour away before. And when he asked me out, he first said, now where do you live again? That was his first question. Now where do you live again? Oh, 15 minutes. Oh, okay. He says, I became geographically desirable.
Is that a thing? Because come on now. That is so funny.
Just,
yeah. But you were worth it.
I was.
You could have been in West Palm, which is a couple hours away.
I don't know if it would have worked out. I think somebody else would have been worth it.
That's awesome.
It's the whole thing. All right. So now when we're dealing with the brides and we're coming through and you're seeing the signs, you're not necessarily saying, So what about when people go over budget, right? I feel like every wedding goes over budget, right? And so what do you normally tell couples, or do you say?
No, that's one of the first conversations we have. And I said it's a come to Jesus moment. Because when they, on our inquiry form, they put a number, right? And so I don't even talk about that number to the end. I said, tell me what you want. Tell me, first of all, tell me your story, because I always love to hear their story.
Yeah.
How did you meet? How did he propose? All that good stuff. Great. What are you envisioning? What venues have you looked at? Where, you're thinking about the Biltmore. You're thinking about this. You're thinking about that. Great. Okay. So tell me about your families. Tell me about your family dynamic, which is another question that they say a lot of planners have never asked them. I'm like, I need to know how many moms you have, how many dads you have. And they laugh. I'm like, I had a bride that her mom was married 3 times.
Ooh.
And all 3 dads, biological and 2 stepdads, were all part of the wedding, and they all got along.
Wow.
So I need to know these things. Who doesn't like who? Do we have a crazy family member that we have to look out for? That's the conversations we had towards the end of right before the wedding. I need to know that. Like, do we have anybody we need to look out for next week? And it happens. Right.
Uncle.
The drunk uncles and, the crazy people, right? Yeah. And so I say, okay, so we talk about, tell me your dream, tell me your vision, tell me your priorities. So do you want it to be flowers? Do you want it to be a great DJ, a great photographer, a good bar, good food? And I just let them kind of just paint me their whole Disney dream, is what I say. And I said, okay, well, Cass, you just told me all of that, and you put $20,000 here for 200 people. You're going to give them a chicken tender and a cup of tea with iced tea with no sugar in it? Because I used to do at the hotel. I'm like, you get 1 chicken tender, no sauce, and tea with no sugar in it. Because, that's all you could do for that much.
Right.
Is this the final number? Or is this like, no, I just put something down or I looked it up. Okay, so what are you comfortable with? My favorite is when the dads are like, there's no budget. I'm like, okay, so if I spend $500,000, like, oh, wait. I love this extravagant if you want it to be. So everybody has a budget, whether they have the money or whether someone's rich or someone's just a regular everyday person. Everybody has a budget. So we have that conversation and like, what's your priority? Because your budget should dictate your guest list. Not you create the guest list and try to squeeze the dollar out of 15. Says no. If your budget is ABC, then what ideally can we do with this budget for 50 people?
Right.
And the pandemic really helped with that, because in 2020, we still did 17 weddings, Cass.
Wow.
From June to December of 2020, they were just intimate and micros. Yeah. And a lot of my couples didn't want these big, elaborate weddings with 150, 200 people. They wanted something intimate, but family obligations and, parents. And so I had a few who pivoted to 30 to 40 people, and they were so excited. It was still beautifully decorated. It was everything they wanted, less people in the room.
Because it was your people.
Because it was your people. And I was like, you have to really look at that guest list. Not everybody is worthy enough to be in the presence of something so sacred.
Yeah.
And like you said, you had everybody stand up. I tell people all the time, everybody in that room is witnessing what you're saying to God and to all of you. And your bridal party is supposed to be there to support you. They're not just hype people for the weekend to have a good old time with. They're there to support you through your whole marriage. Yeah. So really think about, do you really need 500 people, 300 people, 200 people? And they're like, no, like, cut it down.
Yeah.
And so it's like your guest list, is dictated by your budget. Not here's my budget. It's $20,000 and I've got to do, 200 people.
So one of the things that I talk about in our membership, I have a membership community called the Real Love Network, and we talk about who's at your table, right? And it's just like, when you start to look at the people that you spend the most time with, and you're entering a relationship, or you're thinking about entering a relationship, or you're preparing for a relationship, are there some people there that need to go away? Right? Like, who needs to get up from the table and be replaced because your ex-boyfriend or the person you used to mess with or this other person you have drama with, like, really don't need to be here. And then now when it comes to the wedding, it's the same thing. I want to say that I'm grateful because essentially we did invite everybody to the wedding, but everybody couldn't because it was in Mexico.
Right.
So we had 80 people of our closest friends and family, like our true blue folks, that made it a drama-free. Now, I pride myself on creating drama-free experiences. Right now, we have taken women on 4 different events, spectacular, like, 30, 60, 100 women. And I have only gotten back like, wow, Coach Cass, I've never been in a space where I felt no drama, all love, absolutely beautiful. So it's been a theme in my life, but I'm grateful for that. Yeah. And I could see that, when we by obligation have 200-300 people in the room to just talk about how dry the chicken was, it's just like,
oh, it happens all the time.
Anybody got time for that?
I'll be in the bathroom stalls and hear people talking mess about the wedding. And I'm like,
the wedding.
They just spent 6 figures and you just got a $300 a day, $400 a day. And you're saying all of that.
It's a lot.
And it's, when you say that too, it's like being really mindful who your bridesmaids are, your groomsmen are.
Yeah.
And more my couples are doing either no bridal party or just like one or twosies, like not too many people. And I noticed that the older my brides are, like my mature brides, 40 plus, which I love because they know exactly what they want. Many of them, this is their first marriage. And they're like, I've waited my whole life for this moment, this man. I'm going to do it up. I have the money. And it's quick decisions because in their everyday life, they're CEOs and CFOs. They don't have time to be like, well, can you look at another florist? They're like, oh, that's who you recommend, Irene? Great. Let's go with that person. Right. They're really quick decisions, but they're like, I'm 40 and 45. I've had women in my life from all walks of my life, from childhood all the way on. How do I choose? So they decide not to have them. I had one particular bride who had all the special women in her life from childhood on and had them all dressed in a certain color. And she did a special moment with them. Like she did like a reveal with them and gave them each a single rose, gave them words, but they didn't walk down. They weren't at the altar. It was just her and him at the altar. And it was beautiful. And he did the same. They hung out with each other, that kind of thing, got ready together, but it was not a wedding party. Yeah. But if you do choose a wedding party, choose the people who are going to be good for you and a good energy. Cause it's a stressful day. I try to take off as much stress as possible for my couples or my clients in general. But there's some family members' drama that I just can't help. And there's the inner child that screams when mommy says, oh, that curl is out of place. Or you're going to really wear that. Right. We all have that, right? That part, whether it's a friend or family. So be really mindful who's in that squad and who's at that table. Yeah. We're blessed enough that 20 years later that every person that stood up there with us, we're still friends with. Their godparents are our children. Mm-hmm. We talk to them at least once a month, if not every week. They're still our friends. That's beautiful. Because we were really intentional about, hey, this is huge. We had it at a church. This is huge. Like you're saying, I do along with us. We're going to do life together.
And sometimes you got to have a thick skin. Let me tell y'all that my mama wore white to my wedding reception. She did an outfit change and put on a white dress. I was like, that's just my mama. You know what I mean? Like,
right. But you're like, come on, because I've had that at weddings too. And I'm like, you know better. You're a certain age.
Hallelujah.
I don't care. I do not care what any of these blogs tell you. The only one in white, unless the dress code is given to you, is the bride.
Right. And
the groom, if he's wearing a white suit.
That's it.
Don't let these blog influencers fool you. Don't do it.
Don't do it. All right. Let's go to the audience. What we got?
This has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. I'm excited. I'm going to start over here with this young lady.
So I love the part where you see he gave him his pigs in a blanket and some beers later. Have you ever been able to really weave in the male's needs during the wedding? Because the afterthought may be something in his mind of like, am I always going to be the afterthought? How do you really get into the mind of a woman to say, okay, step back, sis. Just hold on for a minute. It's almost like a little therapy.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
How have you done it where it's actually woven in the actual wedding?
Right. For me, it starts right in the beginning. So, there is a conversation that's had, is discovery call that's had before they become my clients. But once they sign on that dotted line, we have another conversation. We have a deep dive planning consultation. Like we're talking about the money. We're talking about who's responsible for what. All of our wants, all their wants, their priorities, all that kind of stuff. And my favorite is like when we're sitting there and he's like, whatever you want, darling. And I look at him and I'm like, that is not marriage, telling you right now. So if you do it now, and it's if you really think about it, planning being engaged and planning a wedding is preparing you for marriage because you got a budget. You got to think about outside influences. You got to think about the what you like, what he likes, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, and if you are tippy-toeing now and not having conversations now, these hard conversations now, marriage is not going to be any different. Like, it's like, this is it. So this is your practice for once you say I do and get the ring on, you have to talk about your budgets. You have to talk about what you're doing for the holidays. Where are you going for here? Where are you going to live? All that kind of stuff. So I like to talk to them. I said, tell me about your family. Tell me about your traditions. And I make my groom so comfortable because I tell them, I said, we take care of you just as much as we take care of her. Because we come in and check on you. My favorite is to walk into a groom suite and the groomsmen all kind of get quiet because they're like, you look like a teacher. I'm like, yes. And then my groom is like, nah, she cool, man. I said, listen, whatever's said in these four walls among you men and myself doesn't get repeated. So I protect them just as much as I protect her. We take care of them. We have someone on our staff, Tevin, that when it's a big wedding party, when it's that kind of stuff, if he needs to be suited, customized suits and all that stuff, he comes in, he steps in, he takes them. His company is called The Silent Best Man, and he comes in and does that. But we take care of them. And I was like, what do you want? what are your traditions? What are your cultures? And helping them intermix that. Like, I'll have some time where the groom is Caribbean, the bride is, she's like, I have one bride, like, I'm regular girl black and he's Caribbean. And I'm like, it's, yes. And, or he's African and she's not, or he's Hispanic and she's black. So it's kind of like, what is it that, and also go back and talk to your parents and what's important to mom and dad. Because a lot of times my groom will be like, oh, my mom doesn't want to dance. Oh, my mom doesn't want any flowers. I'm like, okay, well, do me a favor. After this call mommy and send me a text message. 15 minutes later, you're right. She wants to dance. You're right. She wants flowers. I'm like, yeah. Part. So you imagine if I let that be, if I let that go, a year from now, I'm going to get where's my corsage? And listen, Lord, thank God for all my florists who've taught me how to make corsage. I'll be right back. And I'm like, they're making it, taking flowers from somewhere to make it. But having all those conversations. And for me, it comes from the experience of being married all these years and then being in the industry for 27 years.
And I would just say that in terms of regular relationships, it's just remembering that the men also a part of the relationship. Because sometimes it's like, I'm the prize. I'm the one. It's just like,
give me flowers only.
Right. He is not chopped liver. So to remember those experiences that lead up to a wedding, even in the beginning of dating, that it's not just about you. It's also the experience you create for him.
Right. And not always, for those planning weddings, it's like have moments where you don't talk about the wedding.
Right.
Just a regular date night.
Yeah. So, all right, Irene. So any closing words and then how can we find you?
Closing words. So if you are a woman out there that's looking to be married, my pastor recently said, she said this last year doing a series, she said, start preparing for a marriage and start preparing for a wedding. Start putting your money to the side. Have a wedding fund if that's what you, especially for all the single women out there, like, I want to be a wife. I want to get married. Just like you're preparing to be a wife, prepare for that wedding. Because, depending if you have family members who are able to help you, but if not, start putting that to the side. It's part of the prayer manifestation of it too, because it does cost money. It does cost money to have a wedding. But always listen to your intuition with everything that you're doing, whether it's the significant other or even planning the wedding. If it doesn't feel right, like you said, we could have had something in the city, but we decided to go to Mexico. And if that's your love language and that's something that the two of you do as a couple, do exactly what you want. It's your wedding day.
How do we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Tyndale Events. So that's ITYNDALE events. And that's it. IreneTyndale.com.
Boom. All right. Okay, family, don't forget to grab your love deck, the 60 questions to ask before choosing the one. One thing I know is that the better your conversations, the better the connection, the better the relationships, so you can actually get married.
Hello.
Hey, so thank you for tuning in again. Please do make sure to subscribe, share this with a friend, and until next time, keep loving, keep laughing, keep living. Bye.
Bye.
Hey.
Thank you.